evening and welcome to the Norwood School Committee meeting of Wednesday, February 7th, 2024. We are coming to you this evening from the Savage Center. All 5 of the members of the committee are in attendance. At this time, I'm going to ask everyone in the building to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will mention for the public's consumption that we are coming to you tonight without the aid of internet. Norwood Light Broadband is down right now, so we are doing it old-fashioned on paper. So, and we were not necessarily aware of that in time to print everything out, so you please bear with us. First order of business is approval of minutes. In your packets, you had 3 sets of minutes. There was the business meeting minutes from January 24th and the emergency meeting on January 29th, as well as a set of executive session minutes from January 24th. Are there any questions on the minutes this evening? Moved by Teresa. Do I have a second? Seconded by David. All those in favor? Aye. So that passes 5-0. Next order of business is correspondence. Dr. Thompson, do we have any correspondence this evening?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Fabulous. Moving on to the warrant report. Thank you to Donna for printing it. This week I signed warrants in the amounts of $1,969,399.76, $98,899.08, $23,021.77, $17,655.08, $350,277.44, and $23,506.89 for a grand total of $2,482,760.02. Are there any questions on the warrant report this evening? Great. Moving on to our next agenda item is public comment. Reminder to the public that the public comment segment can be accessed in 2 ways, either hybrid by requesting a link from the superintendent's office by noon the day of our meeting. You can also come in person and sign in at the meeting, as well as calling the superintendent's office by noon the day of the meeting to sign up in advance to be in person at the meeting. Is anyone here for public comment this evening? Did anybody pre-register?
We did not, and no one asked for the link. Thank goodness.
Thank you. So that is wonderful, and at 7:08, I will declare public comment closed. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item is our appearances. This evening we have our Student Advisory Council here to give us their quarterly update. So if you guys would like to come up to the desk here, and unfortunately we cannot broadcast it, but
I'm Sophia.
I'm Kaylee.
I'm Josh.
And Jonah and Joy couldn't be here tonight. Me and Kiki did the elementary schools, and Yash did the Willett, and Joy and Jonah did the Coakley. Whoa.
Good. So for the academic highlights for all the elementary schools, at the Cleveland, they're having new character strong SEL curriculum that has been adopted by all grade levels. And also students in first grade have taken off with reading, so they are excited to read the new books that they have. Grades 3 through 5 have been learning through hands-on science with the STEM Scopes program, and the band and orchestra students participated in a wonderful winter concert. At the Balch, they're in their 3rd and final year of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and multi-tiered systems of support, and they are utilizing an early literacy grant to support a 10-week program with Springboard Learning. Students in grades 1 through 3 were invited to participate in after-school learning around literacy skills, and students went twice a week for 90 minutes to classes taught by Balch teachers. The Prescott made a few shifts in their grade 5 team this year to provide more interdisciplinary opportunities and hands-on opportunities for students in science and social studies. And students now switch classes each day and have both science and social studies built into their schedules each day. And I got
At the Callahan, they've been having whole school assemblies and a school-wide incentive system called CARES, which also relates. Callahan principals were talking to us about starting the SAC starting to help fifth graders run whole assemblies to show more like leadership in their grade. And then at the Cleveland, they've been having Spirit Days. They had a full Spirit Week leading up to winter break and 90s Day for the 90th day of school. Then the Cleveland also had a laser light show focusing on America for Veterans Day and a winter wonderland night with readings by Mrs. Hutchins and Officer Baguma with Mustang Sally. I'm jealous. And they had backtrack vocals where the students heard a cappella, learned how to beatbox, and show off their skills on stage. At the Prescott, the schools are actively preparing for honor band, chorus, and orchestra auditions in February, so this month. And the new program allows for students to develop skills and get feedback as well as play with kids from other Norwood Public Schools. The Balch has a very active and engaged PTO. So right now, in September, they had the open house and ice cream social. In October, they had the Monster Mash. In December, they had Traveling Lantern, which was a play. And they went to see the Nutcracker at the Norwood Theater. And in January, they had Family Bingo Night. Next, we have the Coakley. This was more student-based. Jonah and Joy didn't talk to Dr. Frazier, but they met with a bunch of students who gave them some good feedback. They said for academic highlights, they just gave their favorite classes. Number one was math, then ELA, history, gym, science, and chorus. Then for activities, they had the musical theater, it's like the musicals going on, honor chorus, student council, clothing and food drive, Thanksgiving food drive, bowling club, homework club, and March Madness. They're super excited because last year they didn't have many clubs and they're starting to get bigger, but they still wish they had more. And they also wanted to advocate that their school time change interferes with out of school and other activities that limits free time. Then we have the high school. Me. For academic highlights, term 2 ended, and over February break, we have credit recovery, which is good and bad, but it's still opportunity. We're submitting final application for business and finance for the clean energy innovation pathways. And we're beginning course selection for grade 8 to 11 for next year, and we have a bunch of new and revised course offerings, and we had a student experience survey that focused on student sense of belonging. For activities, we had a lot going on. We had the hypnotist. In March, we have Style on the Hill coming up, and Class Act happened. And we have a bunch of holiday sales for Student Council coming up. The juniors had a hot chocolate sale. The seniors had a candy cane sale. And the class of 25 and 26 is having combined Valentine's Day sales.
Love's in the air. For academic highlights for the Willett, they had instructional priorities, so equitable literacy, equity and inclusion, social and emotional learning, and family engagement. These priorities align with the Willett's school improvement plan and guide a positive change. There are equitable initiatives, equitable literacy supported by a literacy coach through the DESE grant for early literacy skill development, implementation for Second Step, a Tier 1 social and emotional learning curriculum for kindergarten students. Their digital math learning, introduction of ST Math through a grant from the 1-8 Foundation, enhancing a digital math curriculum for kindergarten students. ST Math involves students solving mathematical puzzles and just helping them in math through their courses. Also, they had inclusion and special programs, full inclusion for neurodivergent kindergarten students, specialized programs starts in first grade, exception for ASD students in the PACS program, expansion plans, introducing a new kindergarten PACS classroom next year, aims to provide inclusive learning opportunities and fostering relationships for the kindergarten's families. Budget request, seeking essential investments in the school year 24-25 budget, includes increased service provider allocations, more social, emotional, behavioral support, and additional special education staff. And then early childhood support, emphasizes the importance of early childhood support, believes investment in the kindergarten can prevent higher needs in elementary school and beyond. So they really want just more investments, I guess, in the kindergarten. And then activities, family night or family STEM night happened this fall. sharing, teaching, and learning information, interactive activities, fun learning materials. Family Literacy Night is happening in the spring, similar format as Family STEM Night, academic-oriented events, and then community building, opportunities for families to meet, building community throughout the school year. And then upcoming events they have are Family Movie Night, late January, which already passed, exploring a parents' night out later this winter, supported by the PTO and school council.
I know. Then we didn't have a ton of advocacy this time for the high school. We basically just had the same request as last time, which was more like funding for clubs, nothing new. And then the Callahan also wants to start more enrichment clubs after school, and they also want to meet with us more often so that we can help some fifth graders with their ideas and leadership skills. Obviously, for our next report, we have better contact with the elementary school principals than before, so we'll definitely have a lot of that in our next report. And then the Prescott is looking forward to hopefully receiving some funding through the Title I grant to support small group literacy support. And the Cleveland wants to focus more on inclusion as well as social and emotional learning. And that's all.
Great, thank you.
Any questions? After last time.
Yeah, don't leave. So thank you very much. Dr. Thompson, since we weren't able to project their slides, would we be able to get them on the website so the community could see in the next couple of days? If there's internet again. But before the students leave, I just wanted to briefly mention Kate and I had met with the advisory council on February 7th and with Dr. Galligan. And in addition to talking about some of the things they shared, when did we, I don't know. When did we meet with you?
The other day. Yeah, that's good enough. 2 weeks ago.
I put you're coming on February 7th. We met January 25th. Sorry.
Same thing.
Wrong reading. See what happens when I don't have my written notes in front of me and I have to read my chicken scratch in a notebook. But the other thing that we worked on them with was a review of our wellness policy because the Student Advisory Council has expressed, as you know, interest in mental health and helping us look at some of our policies. So we did talk about the wellness policy. And if I'm inaccurately explaining anything, please chime in. But Kaylee, you had mentioned that you felt like the policy did a really good job with the bulleted list and getting that information out to students. Yash, you made a really great observation that it really tied to the 5 C's, that the high school does an amazing job getting to students and staff. And then Jonah was talking about the focus groups at the high school and getting involvement of the high school students already on wellness of students and staff. And I believe Jonah and Joy also said that the Coakley students were expressing that they wish there were more focus groups at their level. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then another area that we had started to talk to them about was this comprehensive student services audit. That we're going to be doing and involving the SAC in a review of the RFP and then also the proposals when they come in. So hopefully giving them some really concrete ways to help the work of the district. And then I think we're meeting with you again March 5th as a SAC. Yep, and then we were tentatively hoping that they could be back on the agenda. Amory, I think I shared with you already, April 10th and June 5th.
Yes.
And just thank you. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I wanted to thank you guys and Jonah for coming to the candidates meet and greet and sitting down with the 3 superintendent finalists. That was great to see you guys interact with them and them interact with you. So very helpful.
It was a good time.
Anything else before they run?
Oh, thanks for being here.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so next on the agenda, as our next appearance, we have Dr. Galligan here with Mrs. Durain and Ms. Newman to speak to us about the first year supports work date. I apologize, I was blanking. I'm like, I know who you are, but it's blank, killing me.
Good evening. Thank you so much to the committee for hosting us tonight. Just to clarify, we're here to provide an update from the Norwood High School First Year Supports Committee, which was formed last May, consisting of 13 staff members whose mission was to really investigate how to provide the best level of support for our students who are in their first year at Norwood High School, transitioning from the middle school to the high school, recognizing what a large shift that has always been, but in particular in recent years as needs of students have increased, what a heavy lift that is now. And we can't just do nothing, right? So we started to get together and we began meeting, and to date, we've had approximately 15 meetings, 2 surveys, 2 student focus groups, 2 site visits, and many other kind of subcommittee meetings to do a lot of work. So the folks on this group deserve a huge shout out for their work to date. I am here with Ms. Newman, history social studies teacher and 9th grade specialist, I will say, and associate principal, Mrs. Durain, 2 crucial members of our committee. So we're going paper-based. I know you've seen the slides. We're going to kind of run through them, and then we're happy to answer any questions. We're not asking for any type of vote from the committee tonight. This is just us providing an update on our work, and at the end, kind of asking for your endorsement, support, blessing, but no vote is required, and there'll be other opportunities where we come back and provide further updates too. Just a few kind of overarching concepts to frame our conversation or our presentation for the evening. When we're talking about first year supports, the committee has broke this down into 4 key categories. We're talking about academic needs, behavioral needs, emotional needs, and procedural needs. And we'll define each one in a little bit as well. 3 are pretty self-explanatory. 1 might be a little bit new. Research indicates that students who fail a course in the 9th grade year are much more higher at risk for dropping out of high school. Additionally, it shows that a multi-tiered system of supports is going to address each of those 4 areas that we just said. And so our hope in doing this is to be able to provide the ultimate form of systems and supports for students during that year. Historically, high schools are built to maximize efficiency, not necessarily to maximize outcomes always. Like, that is just the truth, that they're built kind of in an industrial model with efficiency at its core, based on size and scale, and there are reasons for that, but there are things we can do better that fall outside of those realms, and we wanted to look at that. We also recognize that assumes that all students on day 1 of their 9th grade year will be ready to handle this model, and we know that is not necessarily true. High schools also introduced some type of enhanced supports. High schools who are working on this, and this is kind of an overarching concept, such as something like a grade 9 academy to build a solid foundation for student success moving forward. While this approach has demonstrated improved academic achievement, it's also shown improved outcomes in other areas. However, we also recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Different places do different things, and we're our own school, and we need to do our own thing too. When we first set out in May, we had 4 phases that we had publicized and put out there to this timeline. Phase 1 was May and June, and we conducted a needs assessment looking at those areas, academic, emotional, and behavioral at first, looking at the transition from middle to high. Phase 2 went from June through September. We researched best practices. We collectively read journal articles on this, on transition from middle to high school, on best practices, on school engagement, on school realignment, all these types of things that are related to it. In phase 3, from October to January, we developed, examined, and solicited feedback from stakeholders regarding potential options for enhanced supports. And here we are in phase 4, from January to March, and our intention at that time was to make a recommendation, or not, for September of 2024.
Right, so I'm going to start us off with some of the benefits and kind of challenges to the current just regular system that we're working on. So what's going well? We have a very strong staff that's very caring, very empathetic, and we do have members like myself that do already teach primarily 9th grade teachers, or 9th grade students. Additionally, our graduation rate, very strong. We're at 97.2%. This is kind of one of our strongest points, and we were going to kind of highlight this in a couple of our feedback forms, but students, when they are coming to the high school, they do feel welcomed. And especially as a teacher, and I'm sure as administrators, this is something that it's something we pride ourselves on. Additionally, there's been a ton of work, especially over the past couple of years, to give students voice and choice in our coursework, especially in elective offerings, as well as extensively over the last recent years, working extensively to kind of give them their real world experience, but making those partnerships with the career programming. So that's all that's kind of going well, but we also know, and definitely more apparent over the past couple of years, we're facing more challenges with our first year students. Some of those we're finding with a lot of our ninth grade teachers with the various disciplines we're teaching and the current structure of our schedule. It's just very hard to find time for teachers to meet. We may have some time on your team or specifically on your grade subject matter team, but getting time together for teachers across disciplinary is very difficult. Additionally, specifically at the start of the ninth grade year, there's no kind of focused transition like programming for the students. We know, and especially highlighted during COVID, there's growing gaps and deficits, especially with our ninth grade students. And I can speak to this a little more later for first-hand experience. When they're coming in, they're really lacking some of the procedural knowledge. So kind of the nuts and bolts of how is the high school different from the middle school, handbook policies, grade point average, things like that. Additionally, they don't have or are still needing to develop their study and organizational skills, as well as, like we said, just that transition from middle to high school. And then additionally, and more highlighted by COVID, we have the increasing need for both emotional and behavioral support, and there's nothing just targeted for the grade 9 students. So moving on from benefits and challenges, we kind of designated our core needs into 4 particular areas. So our first is going to be academic support. We have emotional support, behavioral support, and procedural support. So that's kind of where we were framing the different research that we were looking for. So for kind of academic support, we really wanted to start from that freshman orientation, developing their academic mindset, and just essentially giving them the skills that are going to be transferable across disciplines, as well as inside of their kind of postgraduate world. Additionally, we already have our good framework of the 5 C's in the Portrait of the Norwood High graduate, but we want to build on that and just make sure we're reinforcing that right from the get-go with that first year. Additionally, we have all seen, we know that students just need additional emotional and behavioral support, and they really just need to start specifically being taught self-regulation skills and strategies, working on self-advocacy, managing their kind of more independence that they may have now entering the high school from a middle school model, and then just general more support as they're maturing into young adulthood. And as I mentioned previously, when we are coming into the high school, this can be a little bit of a learning curve, and there are procedural things that they need to understand. They need to be able to understand their grade point average, they need to be able to understand code of conduct, as well as just behavioral expectations.
And why we feel the need to make these changes or look to increase our supports for students, as you've heard, is we are finding that we need to increase or find new ways to meet the needs of our students across their growth, right? Academically, behaviorally, emotionally, and as Ms. Newman said, procedurally, which she's going to develop a little bit later for you. We find that there is increasing needs social emotionally with mental health, and we feel like with this plan we have opportunities for teachers. We've created an opportunity for teachers to meet more often together, not just with a counselor or an administrator, but also across the curriculum, so interdisciplinary for sure, and kids will have better support in every single classroom that they go into. strengthening that transition from high school and really increasing the support in an early intervention way at the beginning of a student's experience helps to make the whole year smoother. I think what we're feeling right now is halfway through the year, some of the kids are really starting to turn and really starting to get the hang of how to do high school. And wouldn't it be great if it started off that way instead of having them play catch up? So for all of these reasons, we feel like it's the right time for us to explore this change. And what types of changes, what we're planning to make, you've heard a little bit about common planning time and how that would be really beneficial for our teachers in really two ways. It provides an opportunity to look at cross-curricular, planning and create new opportunities for students to look at real life experiences. It also can help develop a model where teachers have time to have like a mini student support team meeting where they can meet with parents, they can meet with students, they can meet with a counselor that's dedicated and knows the kids. They can meet to an administrator that can help them with the curriculum and also with behavior issues or other attendance interventions and things like that. Special ed, designated special ed teachers who can help provide interventions and modifications, accommodations right in the classroom. One of the things that we would like to explore, and we've heard from kids that this would be very beneficial, is beefing up our peer-to-peer mentoring support, right? We have that right now with our Mustang mentors. Kids are clamoring for that opportunity to happen more often and in a much more robust way. So we're very excited to be able to try to build that in. And then also building a bridge from grade 8 to grade 9 and really working with Coakley staff and high school staff to have a smoother transition.
All right, so part of the work we did for our committee was we solicited feedback from different stakeholders. So we did extensive feedback from our students, which I'm going to touch upon, and then Cindy's going to follow up with the feedback that we are gaining from our staff. So for student feedback, we did a Google form survey as well as held focus groups. And for our online survey, first I'll touch upon, we had about a 65% response rate. And then when we were holding our focus groups, we were able to get a good cross-section of students. So we have students across grade levels and from their diverse backgrounds. And for the questions we were kind of looking at for our survey, specifically questions about their transition from grade 9, what they think was working well, any particular challenges, how they were handling stress, and then just how their overall academic transition was. And we have beautiful, colorful charts and graphics, which you've taken a look at, and they'll be able to be shared publicly. But one of the things, and Cindy's going to highlight this too, you may know some interesting differences between students' responses versus teachers, so we're going to touch upon that and maybe highlight some of that. But from our students, we had responses from grades 9 through 12, and we had 623 responses. And then we asked basically where they went to middle school before coming to the high school, and we had 76.6% that were attending the Coakley. We have 18.6% that did not attend the Coakley, and then we have 4.8% coming from St. Catherine's. And then this was a very telling slide, but students were asked, how would you describe your overall transition to Norwood High School from your previous school, whether that be the Coakley or St. Catherine's or wherever they were coming from. And we were seeing that about 80.7% are going to rank that transition as easy, very, or mostly. And as a ninth grade teacher, I have a little bit different perspective, we'll say. But our students were overwhelmingly, when they're kind of reflecting on their process, they think in their coming years, and like we said, it's grades 9 through 12, they were reflecting positively and feeling that they're making this transition. Following up with that, we had a series of statements, and students were going to rank their answer on a scale from 1 to 4. So 1 being strongly disagree, 2 being somewhat disagree, 3 somewhat agree, and 4 strongly agree. And like I mentioned before, here we're going to see teachers were asked the same questions when they're thinking about the transition, and there's a little bit of a differing perception on this. So the first question was, I had the necessary skills to be successful. and students overwhelmingly are feeling they have these skills. So we have 49.4% at somewhat agree, 33% at strongly agree. Next up, they're reflecting on their stress levels, and we know coming into high school that can be very stress-inducing, but again, they're sitting solid at somewhat agree, they're at 40.8%, and then strongly agree at 25.3%. So definitely pushing to the strongly and somewhat agree. This one, again, as educators, this one made us very happy, but they were asked if they felt welcomed coming into Norwood Public Schools, and there's an overwhelming push towards that. So a very strong amount with 42.6 at someone agree, and 44.7. So again, we were very pleased when we got that feedback. And then, again, rules and expectations. Again, they're overwhelmingly in the 3 and 4. Same thing when they're reflecting on their interactions with friends and peers and being able to handle challenging situations as they're developing. They're saying they're able to handle these issues. Again, 3 and 4s. They're indicating that they're able to kind of identify their support needs and what adults in the building that they can turn to. So again, somewhat agree and strongly agree. And also they're indicating that they also know if they're struggling academically, they know who to go to as well. And then finally, same thing, they feel that they can organize their classwork, their homework, their long-term assignments additionally. In addition to the student feedback in the Google form, we also were able to, like I said, to get a cross-section of students, and we held several different focus groups. So I was very fortunate to get to sit in on one of these. Actually, Cindy and I ran one together. And similarly, like when we were kind of addressing the whole thing, we kind of wanted to focus on what are some of the challenges with the transition, as well as we had the unique opportunity to ask, if kind of pie in the sky, this is your opportunity, what do you think are the supports that 9th grade and like new students need? And a lot of the challenges that this cross group was reflecting, and like I said, it was all grades, they were from diverse backgrounds, but we did have more students participating that were 10th, 11th, and 12th, so they're kind of reflecting on their own experience, which was kind of unique data as well. But one thing that we just heard overwhelmingly in each of the focus groups is they felt that there's a little disconnect between 8th grade and 9th grade. They're feeling that basically they're not prepared academically or expectation-wise to enter into the 9th grade. Another thing that they said is they're kind of lacking their understanding of why right off the bat, and specifically like why 9th grade matters, and just thinking of their kind of connection to the high school and why that matters. One of the procedural things, they said they really didn't understand their GPA and how that worked, and that 9th grade actually factored into their GPA. They thought that, no, it starts at 10th, and you're like, no, it starts at 9th grade. And they were stressing that they felt that they didn't have the proper study or organizational skills coming in as 9th grade. And then this was kind of some interesting self-reflection, but they felt that from their perspective, when they're coming in as 9th grade or new students, they didn't feel that they themselves were good at advocating or communicating enough, and they wish they had done more of that earlier on, because they know we actually are very nice people and we want to be there to help them. And like I said, we were very fortunate that they gave some excellent recommendations, and a lot of them were kind of already in line with some of the kind of supports that we were considering. One thing that they said would have been helpful for them is just more of that transitioning program. So they're looking more for like a more robust freshman orientation. So going over offerings, setting up some mentoring, as well as just kind of going over the expectations and some procedural. Additionally, they felt that more should be expected of them. They wanted clear and high expectations earlier on, and they felt that that would make their transition to the 10th, 11th, 12th grade years a lot easier. And kind of knowing that they may have been struggling with some like study or organizational skills, as well as procedural knowledge. They wanted like specific instruction in that. And additionally, they Some of them, and some serving as Mustang mentors, they know we do have kind of some supports in for like peer-to-peer mentoring, but they said we could do a lot more there. So we already have kind of the baseline, but we can kind of grow for that and see if they could offer additional supports, especially to those 9th grade students.
And we issued the same questions to staff. We got an 83% response rate on our staff survey, and a cross-section of staff, including, you know, a lot of people who historically teach 9th grade and currently teach 9th grade. We are planning on doing focus groups with staff. We haven't done that yet, but the focus groups will concentrate on that grade 9 transition, what people feel is working, what is not working, what supports we have available, and what opportunities for additional supports they would recommend. You know, when we surveyed the staff and got an 83% response rate, we really were happy to see a good cross-section from all facets of the staff at the high school who interface with kids every day, from administrators and teachers to nurses and paraprofessionals, counselors, the gamut. Interestingly, for staff, you'll see that the transition to 9th grade is the opposite of what the kids said, and teachers indicated that it was mostly difficult or very difficult, with a small number of people saying that it was easy. Also, flipped from the students was that students have the necessary study skills to be successful. And this is a trend you'll see throughout the student answers. They're flipped, and I have we've all kind of processed that and have a couple of theories that we're happy to share after. But the ability to manage their stress was flipped, with teachers indicating that they didn't think that kids had the necessary coping skills. Point of pride was that teachers also felt that students were very welcomed at Norwood High School. Teachers did not feel like students understood the rules and expectations of the high school as well as they could, and that they also weren't really handling the issues with peers and friends appropriately. They didn't really know who to go to for support, and that included academic help. And we're finding that from the teacher's perspective, that the teachers have to lead the kids in the direction to go to, pulling them into WinBlock using MyFlex, kind of when they're not there, going to get them, you know, forcing the issue, making them come, that kind of thing. That goes along with organizing homework, classwork, and long-term assignments. And I think what we were thinking when we looked at these results is really that in a survey, kids sometimes think that they're giving you an answer that you want to hear, right? And what they said in their survey didn't really fit with what they said in their focus group feedback when they were face-to-face with us. So if you know, what everything that Ms. Newman highlighted there in the kids' recommendations were them saying they had the, you know, 10th and 11th and 12th graders having the hindsight of saying, I wasn't really ready, this could have been better. I think the freshmen don't necessarily have that perspective right now. So when they're talking about their experience, it's different, you know. And I think if we do this survey at the end of the year, particularly with the 9th grade, I think we might get a different result. So I think, you know, the hindsight is 20/20, right?
How many kids were in the focus group?
Sorry?
How many students were in the focus group?
Well, we had several focus groups like running simultaneously,
Okay.
but we had 10 to 12 students in each.
Okay.
And again, it was like multi-grade level.
Mhm. Okay.
So in addition to soliciting feedback from both staff and students, committee members were also fortunate to go kind of just see what was out there and what other schools were offering for their 9th grade supports. So through our investigation, we conducted 2 site visits, and we found that Beverly High School and Plymouth South High School, they had long-standing kind of well tried and true ninth grade academies. So 2 separate groups kind of went out, and we just wanted to see what they had in action. And each group got to spend a portion of the day. We had time to talk with the administrators, we talked with planning, we talked with the why they were setting it up, we talked with the rolling out. We got to actually go into classrooms, and we actually got to sit in on team meetings, which was extremely valuable and eye-opening. And a couple of the themes that we kind of got from our site visits was just implementing these ninth grade academies was going to have a profound impact, not just on the ninth grade student body, but the whole entire school population. So we're seeing just kind of an overwhelming like positive shift in both academic growth and behavioral and kind of all those different areas that we were focusing on. Additionally, and this is kind of an added bonus, but when we got a chance to kind of sit down and talk with the teachers, just hearing their overwhelming kind of support, and a lot of them felt like re-energized by being part of this. So that, especially from an educator and especially coming out of teaching in challenging times, like that's what you want to hear. So it was so nice just to get to meet with those administrators and staff members.
We'll transition into the home stretch here and kind of frame our recommendations at this point in time. Again, in the original timeline at this point of the game, we had intended to either make a recommendation or not make a recommendation for something to implement in the fall. That was the original intent. So we're kind of reframing that, and it's housed under 7 recommendations. So NHS First Year Supports Committee supports using an additional year, the 24-25 school year, to adequately prepare for the rollout of a first year academy in the 25-26 school year. So that is the recommendation at this time. So it's kind of like we're half doing what we kind of said. We're making a recommendation, but the recommendation is to implement it 1 year later than when we might have because of the extensive time. The revised timeline will allow for the school to adequately prepare for a successful program that meets the emotional, academic, behavioral, and procedural needs. Recommendation number 1, again, to kind of frame that, reorganize the committee timeline to account for planning needed for launch of additional first year supports. So this allows for additional collaboration between all staff, including teachers, administrators, department chairs, central office, school committee, so that we're all on the same page and that we can do it really well when we do it. It allows for professional development opportunities before launch. It allows staff to utilize planning time next year to be able to develop curriculum and shared practices before going live. And it allows time to pilot some of the elements and get feedback on them next year. Recommendation number 1.
All right, recommendation number 2. We are recommending to prepare to implement a team teaching model in grade 9. So we know that this model is extensively used across middle school, so we want to kind of bring that level of support into the 9th grade year. So we'd be creating teams of teacher, so we're going to have content areas covered, as well as special education staff on each team. And we're really hoping that in this team model, we're going to just be able to basically meet with a more core group of students, as well as be able to develop some of those earlier interventions to make that transition easier.
And recommendation number 3 is to designate teacher common planning time, to use time during the school day for grade 9 teams to meet. That's totally new for the high school. We don't have common planning time built into our schedule, and this would be different where it would just be for the grade 9 teams. But we feel like it will really allow us to incorporate an increase of communication across the team and teams, and it will help us utilize the time to follow, like I said, a student support team structure in order to develop and monitor appropriate interventions with the support of a counselor and an administrator to be able to meet with students and families and co-plan curriculum, shared practices, and experiences for students. Recommendation number 4 is to designate support staff to the first year academy. Increase effective and efficient supports through designated staff that would be allocated specifically to grade 9, to the grade 9 academy. This would be by designated one of the 3 administrators that we have, the associate principal and the 2 assistant principals, to one of us go to grade 9 and a counselor as well. And then with that, as I said before, taking some special educators and making sure that one is attached to each team.
For recommendation number 5, we are recommending increased communication with middle school staff. So we just want to increase the opportunities and the touch points between our middle school counselors and our counseling staff up at the high school, just giving more time, more conversations. They're giving 8th grade can give recommendations for students that are potentially at risk and may need additional supports when they're entering into the high school, as well as really going through with like a fine-tooth comb when we're creating a teams and making sure that students are going to be properly placed and they're receiving the best supports that they can possibly get. For recommendation number 6, we are talking about basically developing the 5 C's through programming that builds habits of minds and those transferable skills. So essentially we're talking about that kind of curriculum developing and essentially the skills we want our 9th grade students to be able to learn down pat and then take on with them. So we want to use a couple of different kind of ways to incorporate a lot of this. So one would be, like we said, building out that grade 9 orientation. So we're getting those skills even from before they enter into the high school. Additionally, coming up with specific curriculum that's taught across content areas, but really stressing their organization and their study skills, specifically working with conflict resolution, and that's going to be added with the additional support of the counseling staff. And we already have a lot of great tools that our counseling staff is providing and kind of building off of that why and when people are when students are planning on their future planning, so really building upon so the MyCap, so the My Career and Academic Plan, which is already being transitioned in, but really fully utilizing that and leaning into that. And then just like we said, fully stressing the understanding of the various procedural knowledge, so GPA, course selection, code of conduct.
Recommendation number 7, and this is the bulk of what the reframe timeline will allow the group and the staff out, across the board to focus on, to really analyze and come up with a proposal that includes the anticipated structural needs that include any staffing shifts or staffing additions, any budgetary needs once it goes live, any course offerings that will need to shift, schedule needs, how it influences our current schedule, and physical space of the building, right? Our building is currently set up by department, by content area, right? So there would be some shifts there. So to do all of that well requires time, planning, collaboration. The committee has done an extensive amount of work thus far, but we'll look to broaden that. So the immediate next steps are to expand the committee. Central office and school committee presentations, here we are. We have presented to the entire Norwood High School staff recently and had really positive feedback from the group there. We have presented to union leadership and had positive feedback there. And then we'll next be looking at staff focus groups. Those are kind of our immediate next steps, and then we'll be creating the expanded timeline to incorporate all of these recommendations. So there's a lot of work that will need to happen, and there perhaps might be questions that people have now, and about 80% of those answers to that question will be, this is what this planning time is set to determine, right? This is why we need that time to be intentional and collaborative and trust the process. This was intended, again, it was recommend or not. So there was no like predetermined outcome. It was kind of a grassroots movement, right? And we want it to continue to be that way. And so some of the questions that are very technical might not have answers yet, but we're confident in them. I do want to give a shout out, since we can't project it, but so I'll read the folks' names real quick before we take questions. In addition to Cindy DeRain and Rebecca Newman, we had Bill Sear, Teresa Drummy, Jess Kaplan, Jeff Kerr, Allison Leichman, Laurie Mead-McGorry, Laura Mullen, Caitlin Notabart, Beth Standring, and Kelly Sullivan, all contributing lots of time and contributions to the First Year Supports Committee. So this time, we're happy to take a few questions. I know we kind of went long, and I appreciate your patience and bearing with us, but this is a really important part of our school improvement efforts, and we believe it's going to have a significant impact on future students and staff.
Thank you. Do we have questions?
Yes, Kate.
So it's super exciting. What a great effort you guys have made, and you can tell that the intention for the ninth grade experience to be more stabilizing and rewarding is a good path to be looking down. One thing that occurred to me, and this is what it would be, I'm sure, explored in the pilot year, is the transition then to 10th grade, right? Like, it seems like a team model can benefit any grade, right? Because you have a group of adults talking about a group of students, and there's a little bit more individualized attention there. And so my question is, like, does that ever go away? So not to open a bigger can of worms, but I'm sure that's going to be part of the discussion too, just like how to, because part of it I'm imagining too is like having the independence be part of the transition at some point too. So that's just one of the thoughts I had. And then you talked about some of the elements being piloted this year. Do you know at this point anymore, like, what would be ready to pilot for the 24-25?
Yeah, we're pretty confident that we'll be able to pilot common planning time for some staff who will be
Cool.
working in the grade 9 academy. And so that will be intentional to allow them the time to co-create, develop curriculum, develop shared practices. So our intention is to begin recruiting staff internally now, this spring, so that we know some of those folks who would be in it and be able to get them the time. So that's one example of it.
Working out.
And
those
I think the
bugs.
peer-to-peer piece, we're
Oh,
looking
awesome.
to try to
Increase
Yep.
that. Yep.
That's great.
To your first point, when you mentioned this idea of like what happens in the coming years, when our site visits were conducted, that was one thing they told us to definitely focus on, because especially when you're providing that level of support, you don't want there to be a drop off. So you don't want to, some of the problems you might see in ninth grade, you don't just want to push them down the line. So it's definitely something that we're gonna take a look at.
So
And when
people have, there's a model out there for that
Yeah.
that you can look at.
That was one of our questions to the schools we visited, like, are we really just like kicking the can down the road? Yeah, and the answer is no. Like,
Yeah.
by putting in the supports there are far fewer students that need it in 10th grade than would need it in ninth grade
makes
had you
sense.
not done this, right? So are there some? Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Far less.
because of this effort, that number is so much smaller.
And also just like age-wise, chronologically, kids are making that transition. And when
Yeah.
they're finding success in ninth grade through this model, they're feeling better about themselves approaching that 10th grade year. So all of that makes a difference.
It makes sense, and it's such a cultural shift too, just like new building, new energy. And I could see how a more robust orientation could help bond that class more. I mean, there's just so much potential. It's very exciting. I appreciate all the work that you guys have put into it. It's very exciting.
Yes, Joe.
So as someone who I spent most of my career transitioning folks from high school to college. So I love everything that you're doing, right? I have two questions and a comment. So my first question is, in any part of this planning, or does there currently exist a summer bridge program similar to Coakley Connects into the high school?
Not currently.
Is there any consideration, did that come up as part of this? Okay,
It
great.
has, but we've been talking,
we have.
right before COVID, Dr. Frazek and I went to an MTSS conference, and one of the things that we were really excited coming out of that conference about was like a summer bridge program from 8 to 9, and it's just not happened, so this is a
Yeah.
great opportunity
Yeah.
for that to take place.
Great, because I know Coakley Connect is really helpful for helping
Yeah.
students develop their self-efficacy as they go in there, even just knowing even just being able to get to your room improves a ton. My second question is, have you guys thought about how to incorporate I'm going to back up. I would love it if you wanted to somehow incorporate AI into the academic support. Generative AI has potential here to do a lot of the reinforcing on the student's own time. So teachers work with them, and then you can assign prompts through AI. You can assign checklisted, or you can assign ways for students to get very personalized, targeted support at home using generative AI. So I just encourage you to look at that. This is probably like so nitty gritty further down the line once your curriculum's already developed. But there is an opportunity there, I think, to amplify what you're doing using some of that. And then my last was just a comment. I had a student do a dissertation doing something similar. So if you want light reading, I can send you his 175-page document on what he learned.
Send it
along.
I know everything's different, but specifically he did a lot of work within their homerooms, in the 9th grade homerooms, which I'm sure you've seen. But if you want another example, I'm happy to send along to you.
That's great, thank you.
That's great, thank
Yeah.
you. There's, this is not a new concept.
Yeah.
It's an old, right, education is cyclical, old is new again.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things, right? So this is a very common concept in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s. And with the intent being to form, to do everything we just talked about.
Yeah.
And we're successful in a lot of ways. And to form, like during the whole movement of smaller learning communities and things like that. You saw whole high schools being smaller high schools. And then that just wasn't sustainable for a number of reasons, and priorities shifted from policy standpoints and things like that. But I do, we had talked about this internally. I think that it's possible that you see kind of a reemergence of programs like this. So I'm thankful to the whole team, and I think that we're onto something really positive here.
It's funny you say it was cyclical, Dr. Galligan, because I was going to say in 1996, when I was in 9th grade, I was on a team in my high school in Pennsylvania, and then it went away. And I wonder why it went away, and I understand why it's coming back, and I appreciate everything that you are putting forth, and I don't want to be like the naysayer, but all of you know me enough to be like, big picture, how are we going to make this happen, and how do we give you the support that you need, and how does this work move forward, and not be for naught. Because in September 25 is when we're opening up the Coakley, and we're already grappling with how we add 17.8 FTEs to support that school and that new model. And we're already asking Dr. Frazek to come up with a new model of lower and upper middle, right? And at the same time, we have an elementary study going on that we keep telling people we can't do anything until we have that study. I know that doesn't directly impact you, but just stay with me. And at the same time, we have our student services audit that we're hoping will have information, at the end of 2024 to start to help us with FY26. And I support 1,000% every single one of these initiatives, but I'm so nervous about what all of this together means for the budget and FY26. And I don't expect you to have that answer for me. And I know that I sent you a lot of questions, and your comment of 80% of it is in the next phase was probably for my benefit. I heard you. I get it. I will be patient. I understand it. It's yet to come. So I don't know what my direct question is. It's just more of, this is amazing work. I support it. I understand it. But how do we, as a school committee and an administrative team, continue to work together to align it all with the realities of the budget and the resources?
Not a direct answer, but just we feel confident enough in this to signal our intention now, and we would not feel comfortable enough to do so if we felt like we needed some extraordinary number of positions to do it. So that's kind of a non-answer, but like I'm not going to be asking for anything crazy. I don't, the shifts that we anticipate, we will need support through counseling. That is 100%. We will need that, and a lot of these shifts can happen with existing staff. And as we learn a little bit more, we'll know where some adds may or may not be necessary. But we would not come forward at this time if we felt like it was not attainable.
Any other questions?
What is the next point in the process, do you think, that you come back to the school committee?
I would say, well, it can be any time, but I would say naturally it would be at the 1 year kind of midpoint of the school improvement plan, right? This is a piece in the school improvement plan, so there'll be action steps spelled out for next year throughout that. We'll also have an updated timeline, certainly over the next 2 months or so. that will really guide us through next year. And we anticipate that to be in line with the budget process for next year, just as this one was in line with the budget process, anticipating any needs for next year.
So one consideration, we'll talk about this in a few moments when we talk about budget, but Anne Marie and I are on the budget balancing committee with the town. And one of the things I think we committed to at the last meeting was starting to really work on those 5-year projections as soon as town meeting is over. So by the end of May, and that's something as an entire district we're gonna have to figure out, but if you can just keep that on your radar, because we're very aware we have to advocate for the middle school. We're very aware to keep the audits that I just mentioned, you know, in the conversation, but it sounds like this is another piece that we need to be kept in the loop, so that when we meet with our counterparts and we do our advocacy, we have the right numbers and data.
Certainly.
Anything else on the committee? Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that update. It was wonderful to hear all about that initiative, and hope we hear more about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your work.
Okay. For those of you who did not see Joe slinking around, we are back online. Occasionally I do see an offline thing go through on the, but it does not seem to be kicking me offline.
It's not super stable yet.
Yeah, but it's pretty decent. Yep. So the next item on our agenda is the superintendent report. So
Yep, here
Go
we go.
ahead.
I'm still going to go old school. So a few things. Just a reminder that this is Black History Month. Hopefully at the next meeting, or at the end of the month, we will have some pictures and things that we have done in our schools this week. This week is also National School Counselors Week, so happy National School Counselors Week. And I would like to remind everybody out there that the McLean Hospital Caregiver Workshop, the recording and sign-in for that is on the webpage under news. And this last workshop was on childhood and adolescent anxiety, strategies to help teens cope with anxiety. So please take a moment. You can watch it on demand from home. So along with that, I would also like to mention something that was sent home in the superintendent's newsletter. Mass Partners for Youth, which we belong to, has Peace at Home parenting video libraries. There's about 5 different topics in there. There are about 5 or 10, depending on the topic, short videos. And there's one that addresses helping your students become successful in schools. It's called In School Success. Helping a neurodiversive child be successful is another one. Supporting anxious children is a third library. And there, again, there's several videos and articles in there. Mental health knowledge and skill. And Parenting for Progress, Not Perfection is the 5th library at this time. Those are free because of our affiliation and partnership with Mass Partners for Youth, and I encourage parents to take advantage of them. The other things I'd like to give everybody just a quick update on our new arrivals. At this point, we have 18 students. They are placed and thoroughly involved in our schools. We were able to accommodate them without having to increase staffing or transportation or any costs therein. And just a reminder, we are getting $104 a day from the state to provide for their needs. I'm very proud of the welcome that we gave those students coming to us on the 29th of January. With that, it was really exciting. They were very excited to join us. And I also want to point out that there is a community volunteer meeting tomorrow at 7 o'clock at the Balt Schools for those who would like to do some volunteering and help. It will be coordinated. We just can't have 1,000 people showing up. I know there's a lot of people who want to help, but that is getting kicked off with the town leadership at the Balt School at 7 p.m. I believe it is in the cafeteria. So that is my report, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Thompson?
Just one question.
Yep.
Dr. Thompson, you said there's 18 new arrival students now?
18, yes.
So I think the last
we
time
were
we talked
we
there
were
was
so
16.
welcoming that I think we got 5 or 4 more.
Do you
Yes.
know which level, elementary, middle, or high?
Offhand, I do not.
Okay.
But there was I think there was 1 more high schooler, 1 more middle schooler, and 1 more or 2 more grade schoolers. So
Okay.
again, we're able to fit them in where we already have space and services, and put them on vans that are in that area. So might be a different story when they all transition at the end of June, but we'll have time to adjust for that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Thompson? Okay, so we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is budget. So, Ms. Stewart, would you like to start us off with the budget subcommittee update and budget balancing?
Yes, so now you get to see all the stuff I put in your packet. So in the packet, you have materials from the Budget Balancing Committee meeting that we were at on January 31st. Dr. Thompson went, Anne Marie went, Dr. Taylor, Mr. Wells, myself. You also have in the packet some additional materials that Mr. Mizuko sent out the day after Budget Balancing Committee. And then you also have a copy of the materials from our Budget Subcommittee meeting on February 1st. I sent out earlier a copy of my spreadsheet from the BBC meeting. I've been trying to get an electronic copy and was not able to, so I apologize for my notes that you see. But on this spreadsheet, this was what was discussed at BBC. And then there's been some evolution of the discussion that'll catch you up on. But you have a spreadsheet that was generated by Tony Mizuko, General Town Manager. And you can just see estimates for revenue and then also what he had put forth to BBC in terms of the growth of the budgets that could happen for FY25. And originally what was proposed is that the general government would be growing at a 4.75% rate. Important to know that 1.75% of that is actually the cost of trash that is going up. And then what was proposed last Wednesday at BBC was that the schools could have a 6% growth. Now it is important to know that this number included, remember the supplemental funding that we went for at town meeting last May through warrant articles? Originally that was supposed to be considered separate from our budget. That is what we as a school committee had agreed to last May. But what Tony is proposing is to roll that money into our base budget because most of it was used for our out-of-district tuition, special education, things that we know are not, unfortunately, just one-time costs, things that have become part of our ongoing budget. So the $60,085,599 is with that supplemental funding rolled in, plus 6% growth. The numbers that you see on this sheet, they're not all finalized yet. The regional schools number, Blue Hills is still unknown. I believe he budgeted for a 5% growth of Blue Hills, but the Aggie number is accurate. The numbers of shared costs, health insurance is going up 9.5%, which is significant and higher than the 5% max that the town would like to see. And then this also allots the facilities budget to go up just under 3%. Now, this sheet that I'm talking you through that we looked at BBC had some assumptions embedded in it that in order to be able to fund the schools, the town facilities to this degree, that we would need to deplete all of the override stabilization fund. So that would be taking out $2,936,239. It was also assumed that we would use $2,300,000 of free cash. And as you may imagine, a lot of discussion happened around these numbers and what is our comfort level with depleting an override stabilization fund and using so much free cash. Of note, the town currently has $7.3 million of free cash in total. And there is also our general stabilization fund in the town that currently has $9 million in it. The day after BBC, Tony sent out another spreadsheet, which you do have access to, which some of these numbers changed a little bit. There was a proposal to take less of the free cash. But basically, what we walked away from the Budget Balancing Committee meeting last week was the request that Dr. Thompson, Mr. Wells, and the school committee look at a couple different options. Number one, what is our budget at a level service, including the ESSER positions? Number two, what would our budget look like at a 5% growth? And then the third, what would our budget look like at the 6% growth? Mr. Wells, am I accurately summarizing everything? Okay, thank you. If I said anything wrong, tell me. Now, that is a lot of work, as you can imagine. And as you know, we were anticipating that Dr. Thompson and Mr. Wells would bring their budget version A to us next week, which they are still working on. But in addition, there is now these three other layers of analysis that we will be getting. We were supposed to meet as a subcommittee tomorrow. But understandably, all of this takes a little bit longer, so we are meeting as a subcommittee next Tuesday. So we will meet, Anne Marie and I, with Dr. Thompson, Dr. Taylor, Ms. Amino, and Mr. Wells on Tuesday. Wednesday, we will bring all of this to you. So forgive us for the quick turnaround in the packet. And then next Thursday, we have to go back to budget balancing. In your packet, just so you know what you're looking at, you have a presentation that Maya Bodenhofer and Alan Slater had put together that kind of just sets some parameters for the discussion around FY25, as well as what we need to talk about with the 5-year projections. We had hoped to be working on 5-year projections all this past year. That just did not happen, unfortunately. Everybody agrees the priority is FY25, but then after town meeting, we want to jump into FY26 through FY30. And Maya, as many of you know, are really great at putting together visuals, and she has a number of different flow charts that we're going to continue to look at as we go forward. But the most pressing thing that we should talk about tonight is just if you have any questions or feedback on anything that I'm sharing about FY25 that you want us to look into or take back to BBC.
When did you say the next BBC meeting is?
Next Thursday. And it's early. I think we said 4:30, right, Anne Marie?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, the 15th at 4:30.
Okay. Yeah, Joe.
As these kind of various options were being laid out,
Mm-hmm.
was there any discussion about what happens if we get out of district students placed in something forces us to go over budget midway? Was there any conversation around that, how that cost is shared by the town?
So not for FY25. There were a couple ideas thrown on the table that we're going to need to reconcile for like a longer term 5-year plan. I know Mr. Wells is looking at out of district, and the numbers are concerning and going up. That trend has continued. One of the things that these numbers in front of you don't yet take into consideration, I don't believe, is circuit breaker offset, right?
Right, so we have to, we've talked about circuit breaker offset. We're using a lot more this year for circuit breaker offset than what the receipts are. So we're using some of the current year receipts, plus we're using the carryover, and it's more than what the current year receipts are. Mm-hmm. So best practice is you receive in this year, and then you spend in the following year. And we've moved off of that cycle for this 1 year, and I think we need to move back to that. So that's going to be a consideration as well.
So my question is really about next year, because it sounds like for fiscal year 25, I understand committing to a long-term plan for 26 and moving forward, and that makes a whole lot of sense, and I'm excited about that. As much as I get excited about budget. But my concern is really about fiscal year 25. It sounds like we're spending down a lot, right? We're talking about utilizing a lot of free cash. We're talking about depleting a stabilization fund. 3 to 5 students move in and require out-of-district placements, that could be $1 million.
Right.
Is there conversation about that type of unanticipated but highly feasible scenario and
Yes.
how we would cover that?
Yes, and I think that's part of what we have to go back with next week with all those different scenarios of the level services. I mean, you can't predict it entirely, right?
Right, we can't predict
with
it,
the level
but-
services, with the 5% growth and with the 6% growth. One of the things, Joan, I think that's related to your question that's important to understand, this is a little bit different than how we've done it before.
Yeah.
Before, I feel like we started at the floor and we worked our way up to the ceiling. This spreadsheet in front of us, this is the ceiling.
Yeah.
So I don't think we go much higher other than the possibility of that general stabilization fund of $9 million. And I'm not advocating in any way to any finance commission member who is watching this that we deplete that $9 million stabilization fund. But this, what's in front of you from Mr. Mizuko, this is the ceiling.
So, okay, so I guess I would just advocate that we think about some sort of an agreement that we are going to, like, once we lay out the budget and set the budget, that we don't mid-year have to go and make cuts to general or to RIF because we've hit our ceiling and then 3 to 5 students move in who require out of district. Or,
Well,
you know.
I think it's important to note that that's already happened this year. I mean, and we didn't go back to the town for more money.
But-
So that's something we've had to deal with within our own.
But for this year, that's not included in any of the, like, things that,
But it really wasn't before either. I mean, there was some wiggle room, but there wasn't like, okay, here's our Tucky Fund in case 4 kids move into the district and that have to go out of district. It's always creative budgeting once something like that happens.
with the town. What I'm concerned about is if there's a ceiling.
There has been a ceiling. We haven't gone back to the town.
We haven't gone back.
We haven't gone back to the town with any
Okay,
of that.
I don't think I'm being clear, and that's probably because of my lack of understanding. So I'll drop
No,
it.
I understand what you're, I
I'm just g-
completely
I'm-
understand what you're saying.
I'm concerned we're gonna have to make cuts
Uh-huh.
if stuff that previously has been kind of agreed to as, it's almost like a like,
No,
special
what-
ed is almost like a shared.
Oh, right, but what has happened over the last, like, 2 years, let's say, with the, especially this year, this past, what we're living in with the massive increase that the
Mm-hmm.
out-of-district went up. You know, we were able to get into the budget with those, you know, warrants and things like that, essentially what our what our Chapter 70 increase was, essentially, which definitely helped. But even the year before, we had a lot of you know, special education needs and out-of-district placements that we just had to absorb within the budget. And so if it was like from higher down savings or from other, you know, other things that we just didn't spend the money on, it wasn't cuts, but it was shifted. There were definitely shifts. And so it's always been a ceiling. Our budget that our bottom line budget has pretty much always been a ceiling. We don't go back and ask for anything else from the town.
We got into the situation where we needed the override because, okay, so we didn't make cuts, but we just didn't buy curriculum, right? So I feel like, okay, so like,
No,
that's semantics,
no, that's
right?
No, that's
And
fair,
what I want to do is make sure make sure that if we are on schedule to purchase curriculum and we get 3 to 5 out-of-district students that we have to fund, that we continue to purchase curriculum. We should learn our lesson from needing the override is what my point is.
Yeah, but I think it's important, one thing to point out, because I heard you say the stabilization fund, and I do want to make sure absolutely clear that we are not touching the actual general stabilization fund. It's the override one, which
The override
we
stabilization,
figured would
right,
be
yep.
gone after 5 years anyway,
Yep.
and then COVID happened and lots of, you know, state funding and
By
grants and
nature,
things.
I like to have lots of money socked away in little places.
And we've been doing that definitely
And
the
if we can
last
just
few
leave that
years.
money and forget about it. Pretty much,
I think
yeah.
the trade-off is, you know, that if
Yeah,
we don't get.
buried where I don't remember them.
I think the
Yes.
trade-off is, and, you know, obviously there's gonna be some discussions with the town. I mean, a lot of people in the town saw this proposal and went, oh, what?
Yeah.
You know, so, but it's that, or, you know, we're gonna cuts anyway, because we're not gonna have the funding. So it's definitely something that's gonna play out over the next couple of weeks on exactly who gets what and how it's allocated. Because if the town, you know, if as a budget balancing and on the town side and the school side, they say, no way, we're not touching all that because we need something in the kitty, we won't, that's just less that we're gonna get
Yeah.
up front, and that's things that we can't fund in the budget in the first place.
And again, I'm not suggesting how, I'm just saying,
Yeah, no.
I fear that
Noted.
we are going to end up in a situation where we needed an override if we don't learn the lessons from how we got in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you.
I mean, to your point, Joan, it's like, how do we protect programming and budgeting that is meant to directly impact student outcomes, right? Like, how do we protect those things in the context of all this?
Right.
some of that might be sitting down with the town and talking about what do we consider to be quote-unquote Norwood mandated funds, right? Do we have a general consensus among the schools and the town that curriculum, if we lay out a 5-year plan, that curriculum is as important as the mandated things that we have to do, right? Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
there's creative
No,
ways to do this.
You're right, a hierarchy of what has to, and that's, it
Exactly.
is something that we have discussed in a way that has made people uncomfortable, and we don't want to move forward with it, but kind of speaking, like special education, we are required. ELL, we
Right.
are required. And kind of mentally looking at those as a separate budget that has to be funded.
Yep.
And we don't want to get to a place where it's like, oh, and general ed's down here, and then.
Yeah.
You know, we definitely don't want to get to that place. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You're right,
Right,
yeah.
you've just climbed out of that place, and
That's what- right. That's
there
what I'm
is a
saying.
curriculum review cycle. And unfortunately, because you're in that place, we've spent the last 6 years installing curriculum and not some other things, and elementary folks every year have been learning a new curriculum as you go along, so,
It's
so you
also-
definitely wanna go back, but, you know, in a budget, you know, you do your best guess in January. You come to next September, some of the assumptions are less expensive. Maybe you found someone at bachelor's step 2 instead of master's step 2 or what have you, and a few of those. And you look for money in your budget first to cover increased costs. I am hopeful we will still have some sped stabilization left as well as a worst-case scenario. The only time we have gone back to town meeting in the fall and asked for more money is when COVID hit and we were looking to run the online academy. So that says a lot about the fiscal management of this district up until this point, in that we were able to shift. I mean, the difference in a school budget is you can have a family move in and, you know, they need different types of services. That impacts the school right away. That does not impact, and I'm not pooping on anybody else, but it doesn't change the number of houses that have to be patrolled by the police station, or the number of streets that have to be plowed by the DPW, or what have you. So a family moving in does not necessarily change town services, trash pickup, you name it. You can go on and on. It doesn't change because it's still one house with 4 people in it.
Right.
But if 2 of those students have either significant needs in the school and or an outplacement, that could be a $200,000 to $300,000 shift.
What I don't want to see is our curriculum being left up to whether or not we have teachers retiring.
Yeah.
That is,
Agreed.
for me, we have had great fiscal management, that's great, but that has been on a lot of shoestrings and shuffling to pay, what is it? Pay Peter. Rob Peter to pay Paul, which is how we ended up in this situation. We did do some of that during the COVID years because I voted against it, where we delayed curriculum implementations.
Well, and
Yeah,
what
but
we
that
learned
wasn't-
too
It
is
doesn't,
that-
Yeah.
my point is
Yeah.
the first thing that goes is general education. And as we move through this budgeting process, it is very important that we learn the lesson that we got taught pretty hard.
Exactly, yeah.
I-
Because it
2 of us sat in this room and had to vote to close the Willet.
right,
I'm
it-
never doing that again.
It's a problem. We need to sort of shift the perception that it's an economical fix, right? It pushes off your economic problems until later. It creates more expensive issues down the road, and in the meantime, generations of, classes, not only are they missing out, but we're pushing the can down the road, and that just grows exponentially in terms of actual cost to the taxpayer. So that's just, I think it's really good to have this discussion, just as we are in these meetings and trying to get perspectives on the same page and buy-in from our municipal partners.
Yeah, I'm not saying we need more money, I'm not saying that
No,
this
no, I
doesn't
know, I
work.
understand what you're saying.
I'm saying as a collective planning group for the town, we need to pay attention to the history and come up with a plan for how to deal with it.
I think everybody completely agrees with what you're saying, Joan. Maybe different opinions of how we get there, but I think
I'm
everybody
not the expert on
agrees
that.
with that. I also think some of the things you're bringing up for FY25 will happen more at this table next week when we get budget version A and our some parameters that we as school committee, what Dr. Thompson will have to set. Like, what are our priorities to protect? Like, one of the things is because the BBC agreed was getting those ESSER positions in. Now it's up to Dr. Thompson and Dr. Muniz and Mr. Wells to determine, those 7 ESSER positions. Is it exactly what they are now, or are they reallocated somewhere? That's for them to bring to us. But another thing that Anne Marie and I were talking about with Dr. Thompson in the budget subcommittee is with this 6% growth potentially, using this as an opportunity to get some of those middle school positions in that we have not been able to get in and that we know we need to get in, so that way FY26 isn't hit by the 17.8 FTEs. Can you get 2 or 3 of those in? So those are like some parameters and priorities we've just started to talk about. I expect that conversation to happen here more next week. Is that correct, Dr. Thompson?
Yes.
Yeah. But
They will start next week. I don't think we'll be finishing them, but.
yes, begin to happen next week. But Joan, with your questioning and your thoughts, I mean, one area that I could use guidance, because I'll go rogue, but I'll also go rogue with support. On the spreadsheet that we have from Mr. Mizuko, if you look under non-property tax revenue and you look under that first line state aid cherry sheet, what that includes embedded and not specifically called out is the homeless transportation reimbursement and the Chapter 70% increase. So the way it's currently on the spreadsheet is that those areas, which are directly related to student need, are ruled into non-property tax revenue, and then down here in blue where it says all revenue, it's included there, and then it's split. So a discussion could be take out those 2 things, do not count them as all revenue, and they just go directly to the school department budget. But I don't know if that's a strategy that the school committee wants to have or not, or if it's just me.
The budget to be reduced by that much.
Well, not necessarily though, but I don't know if that's
Or
something.
hold that in reserve.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Hold it in reserve for unexpected special, like, I'm not,
I would not advocate for reserve.
Well,
We
I'm
need to
just,
spend it.
the idea of the special ed stabilization fund makes a whole lot of sense, right? Like, and I like, again, this is coming down to personal preference, and I am not on the budget subcommittee, and that's for a reason, because whenever I try to do math, I do it wrong. But, unless I have, calculators and statistics. But whatever I like to have a little bit of money socked away so that when you set out your priorities in your budget, you can be confident that that is what is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to have to be in a position where we have to, we can't raise MCAS scores. Like it or not, you have to teach the test. And if you're teaching using curriculum that is not connected with the current MCAS, you cannot expect your scores to go up. You can really only expect them to go down. And that's the situation we were in. And I just don't want, I apparently am having my own trauma response to that. But I'm gonna stop advocating because I think everybody agrees with what I'm saying, and I don't have any solutions or specifics. I guess I'm just saying, I'm standing behind you with the bully pulpit saying.
Okay, stand behind me. I'll go rogue. You stand behind me.
Saying, let's work together to make sure that we anticipate the potential. And the most likely is going to happen, and let's hope that it doesn't.
I would like an explanation from our municipal partners about why that Chapter 70 increase and our homeless receipts and our Medicaid aren't part of our budget. I don't
The
understand
Medicaid's
that.
not in there.
Okay.
So because
So
that
we
was a
are gonna
discuss-
get that back?
Not gonna get it. It's a conversation that we're having, so it was not included in here.
Okay. But that's another piece.
Because that at least that, we can tie directly to the work that the district members are doing, services going to the student. Obviously, the homeless, we can tie it, but, that's a conversation we are having with the town. So it is not in this number.
I just have never heard a really solid reasoning on it, and you don't have to give it to me now, but I think it's something that on this board, but also the public needs to understand.
Yeah, and I think just the short version, really, I mean, those other two are included in here, and so if they're not and they go directly to us, that is less money that is available to split between the towns and the schools. So it would equal less money from the town, like revenues, because it's not in there.
But it
to
becomes part of our
to
budget.
Increase.
So I'm gonna jump in and interrupt. I think it's a great conversation. The main thrust of tonight is a conversation we have to have that's gonna take a long time, and it's already 8:30, so I'm just throwing out there that
Yeah,
just
I
to
was
hold the
asking for-
conversation. No, I hear it, but I think we're
I just would
getting
like
into the
more
weeds, and
on that.
I wanna make sure that we're all on our A game for
I agree with
the
you.
conversation that
And
we
I
want
was
to
just
have.
asking to have that built
Yeah.
out a little bit more, but I think you're right.
I will finish by saying, just as a, to the point of the reserve, the reserve fund, the stabilization, thank you, the special education stabilization fund. I know, I was like, what kind of fund is it? I didn't have coffee. Obviously, we did, as part of the warrants, we said, the agreement that we had with the town for the budget for last year, that we have money from there to spend towards, and that is always what has helped us with sudden move-ins and things like that. We hopefully, we said we would give back, one of those warrants, we said we would give it back if the transportation, monies. Happy to do that, obviously. But, I mean, I'm still hopeful that, even though it was a really tough year, that maybe there is something at the end to put back into that fund that kind of maybe surprises us at the end of the year, looking at Mr. Wells. But like, to continue, I mean, we are, that fund is still there, and the importance of keeping money in it is still on the forefront of our minds anyway. But I just wanted to point that out, that
Yeah, I would just request, because David, I know we have to wrap up and everything, but this is also, an A-game level conversation we have to have, and Anne Marie and I are in about 10 hours of meetings next week around budget. So as people review this information, if you have other thoughts or questions or concerns, let us know. That way we can work on it on Tuesday with Dave and Matt, and then be prepared for next Wednesday's conversation, because I would anticipate spending at least an hour on budget next Wednesday. But that is the budget update.
Alrighty.
Happy Valentine's.
All right, so our next item is old business. We don't have anything under old business this evening. Then next is policy. This will be very quick. Kate, would you like to?
Yes, it will be very quick. We are still waiting to hear from council about the recommendation for JLCA, so no vote on that tonight. And I will do a brief summary of the fact that what we chose to concentrate on yesterday was the December MASC recommendations on several new technology policies. And Joe Kidd joined us. It was a really good conversation. Some things are pretty straightforward, and we would probably recommend to adopt directly. I'm not going to name a bunch of letters right now because you don't have anything in your packet to look at. But some of them are going to require further conversation on some of the implications. A couple of them we already had adopted. And then there's a chunk of them that were just rewording or renaming. So that we did not get to, and we're going to look at that when we get together on in March, because I think our next meeting was scheduled for February break, so it won't be until the
March 6th.
yes.
6th, yeah.
So interesting things there, but nothing, no votes and no recommendations as of tonight.
Any questions for policy?
Thank you.
Okay. Yep, so we're going to jump over into consent agenda. And you can get to it, right? 'Cause,
Yep.
I'll say Donna printed me one.
No, so we have our monthly Bay State Textiles donation. This month's total is $486.60.
Any questions on the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to accept.
Motion moved by Teresa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0 to accept that donation. Okay, so then we are going to move into our next item of business, and we're going to discuss the superintendent search. And with this piece, our administrators do not need to stick around. We will need you back for executive session.
We'll call you.
But we'll, yeah, exactly.
Can we take just like a 2-minute recess?
Sure, we absolutely can. Can I get a motion for that?
Yeah, motion for 2-minute recess.
Moved by Teresa,
Second.
seconded by David. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll take a brief recess and be back in a couple of minutes. Back to the school committee meeting of Wednesday, February 7th. We just came back from a brief recess. We are ready to go to our next agenda item, and our next item on the agenda is to deliberate and choose and select our new superintendent based on the search that has been ongoing. As part of the deliberations, we will begin by discussing each candidate in alphabetical order. So process-wise, we will go through and let every committee member speak about that candidate before we will move on to the next until we've done all three. And then we will begin deliberations on who to make an offer to. So for the first candidate is Meg Dussault from Sharon. Dr. Dussault came in and interviewed with us on Saturday, and I think we will start over with Teresa for this one. Is that okay? We start down there?
Yeah, sure. Before I jump into Dr. Dussault, I just want to say about all three candidates, thank you so much for their interest and all their dedication to our district so far. And I think that each candidate brings many strengths that could serve Norwood well. And it's a really hard decision to decide whose strengths and who experience meet the needs of our district best, and which candidate can most efficiently and effectively move our district forward and support our students, staff, and community. So about Dr. Meg Dussault. It was very apparent to me that she is someone who engages and makes you feel welcome and heard right from the first interaction that you have with her. I think this is a significant strength, and it is something that we heard in feedback from staff in the community as well as from her references. Dr. Dussault appears to be a very strong communicator. She focuses on building trust, and she prioritizes relationships. And these are all characteristics that I believe would serve our school district and community well. Dr. Dussault appears to be someone who will jump in and take on any task. The role of superintendent has rapidly been changing over the past few years and requires somebody who can pivot, who can be innovative, and who is willing to do the hard work. And I got the clear sense that Dr. Dussault is somebody who naturally does all of those things. She talked a lot in the forum and in her interview about partnerships with parents, about empowering teachers, and about working in collaboration with the town. I like her experience and the leadership that she has demonstrated in Sharon, both during the COVID times and then also during a time that her school district really needed strong leadership to navigate transition and conflict. She also has an experience on building projects. Another area of her approach that I appreciate is in regards to policy. She had said in her interview to us that you need to make the policy work visible, and in order to successfully implement policy, all stakeholders must understand the why, and that really resonated with me. She brings valuable experience in HR functions, contract negotiations, and community outreach. Lastly, in her interview with us, she expressed that she is always willing to learn and to continue to grow. I can see her modeling our core values and the 5 C's for our staff and our students.
Thank you.
Just an introductory note that the process as a whole has illuminated for me some universal challenges in education right now. I too want to thank all of the candidates for participating, and I think that they all have something to bring to Norwood at this time. But in hearing all of our candidates, and even through the screening process, what was evident was that whether it's staff morale or student dysregulation or the need to prioritize student belonging as a strategic initiative, the candidates we saw and these finalists have dealt with Norwood's priorities and challenges on some level. As I see it, the priorities for the next superintendent need to be relationship building, both within the district and community, and the capacity to execute on a strategic vision for the district. The process has been an important part of getting to know the candidates, with each step revealing a new and deeper information. David and I and some others were in multiple tiers of the process where we got to see them in different facets. All 3 of them are excellent, again, and have strengths that we would benefit from. So for Dr. Dussault, she has strong interpersonal skills that shone through at every stage of the process. At a time when there is a need for trust to be strengthened and morale to be built, these skills are vital to the progress in the district. Meg is a direct communicator, which I really appreciate. In the screening interview, when we asked about teacher evaluations and challenges, she emphasized the need for direct conversations and not being able to solve for solutions if communication isn't direct, showing the importance of proactive problem solving. Meg is proven in battle, to sort of what Teresa was saying, so to speak, in her district. She has proven the ability not just to talk about it, but to be about it. In times of dysfunction and crisis, she did not shy away from the work and jumped right in to lead the district to stability and solutions. Her references praised her demonstrated reputation for being known for getting her hands dirty. In terms of engagement, she has excellent community engagement experience. She spearheaded the townwide task force for welcoming newcomer families when Sharon was one of the first towns to receive people for the emergency shelter program. The educators on the screening committee responded really well to Meg, feeling her style was very approachable, and similarly, that went through the process, feedback on the visits. We got the same sort of feedback on that as well. I observed the student meet the candidate session, and she was very comfortable with our student advisory committee. She inquired about their personal experience and about what makes Norwood unique and what she'd need to do to make friends in Norwood. In terms of vision and capacity building, I loved what she said about teachers unlocking knowledge that students will have forever. She said that here at the final interview, and it really speaks to her core belief and what drives her. Acknowledgement of a new frontier when it comes to SPED increases across the district and how turnover is exacerbating the challenge. Also sort of tipped me off that she's realistic about, how times are shifting, what the realities of our challenges are. Meg is familiar with the process of developing a budget and passing it through the town meeting model form of government. That's it for Meg on me.
Likewise, I want to just publicly thank the Norwood Selection Committee for bringing us 3 excellent candidates. I think all of whom could do the job particularly well. I thank the staff and the faculty and the community that came to forums, asked questions, and specifically provided feedback. We did receive all of the feedback. I know I read through all of the feedback that was provided by staff and community, and I observed the staff interactions with all of the candidates, the community parent interactions with the candidates, and then of course the final interview. So I just wanted to say thank you. And for me, I pulled out comments specific to each candidate that match up with the needs of our district, because I think that's really about what this is about, is the needs of our district matching the strengths of the candidates. So for Meg, or Dr. Dussault, very similar to what my colleagues have said, communication is clearly a strength. Parents in the community felt very confident and comfortable with Meg. Staff and faculty also felt Meg was very approachable and focused on building relationships, which they thought was a key attribute. Staff and faculty didn't think that Dr. Dussault was trying to sell us on her ideas of what Norwood should be, but was genuinely interested in what Norwood wanted to be and how she could help. She jumps in and makes things happen, which is incredibly important in a lean district like ours, especially where we are going to have some turnover in our central administrative office. Extensive experience partnering with community organizations in Sharon to help. In particular, I like this because it helped broaden the community interest in the schools and improve school offerings and enrichment offerings. She has shown that she is adaptable and thrives under stress, as she was tossed into being an interim superintendent during COVID, and had to lead a district that was not only dealing with COVID, but was coming out of a highly publicized legal battle, and at the same time leading a high school building process while she was an interim. So communication, experience, thriving under pressure, and somebody who adapts and works well on the ground and is adept at building relationships is my summary.
I think Meg would describe herself this way, or Dr. Dussault would describe herself this way as well, that she took a very non-traditional path to where she got, and I think of the candidates we interviewed, she was the most unique in that sense. I can't say enough, she's bubbly, she is personable, you feel that when you're in the room with her. I also think that, you guys have mentioned it, but we can be clear, is that, the district that she is in was in very troubled times, and for her to rise up from within and be able to manage and help heal and begin that process of moving that district back to where it needs to be is incredibly important. The district that she is currently in is a high achieving district, and there was a lot going on. So for anyone to be in that system, be put in a temporary the temporary leadership position at the head, to be able to get that district back and going, I think speaks to her leadership, her skills, her ability to do the job. That was very evident, and I think she brings a lot of perspective, a lot of really good ideas from her former district and through that experience. So
I would also like to take just a second to thank our selection committee and all the candidates that applied, every single one, and especially, obviously our finalists, but and also our fearless school committee leaders of that selection committee, and Jim as well, who's in the room for helping us with this, and our consultant on this search. It has felt well done, and I appreciate everybody's feedback, everybody's time, everybody who has come and done any of these interviews, who have come out and done the meet and greets, who have filled out the forms. This is your district. So really, really do appreciate everybody that has gotten us to this point tonight. So as far as Dr. Dussault, I really did, it's tough going last. Everybody had some really great points, and I will echo all of them. What I really felt that set her apart in this interview process was her personality, her outgoingness, and the fact that she didn't shy away from the fact that she is a different candidate. She had a different path to where she is now, and it makes her unique, and it makes her different, and it makes her, and not in any bad way, all good ways. And we did see that in some of the surveys, some of the community surveys that we got. We're really kind of excited about her, the fact that she is different, and that maybe it's a fresh approach, and it would be something really good for us. I really liked that her communication style was really great. She's obviously very enthusiastic. Her experience within the community and getting community involvement, and just being able to speak to people and get their excitement up was really infectious. I obviously putting parallels into Norwood, the fact that she was leading a new building in her district. We have a new building going up in our district, drawing those parallels. That is experience that we definitely could draw off of. I did want to point out my favorite thing that she said is something that I actually say all the time. In her interview, she basically said, don't ask anyone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And I live by that in my professional life. So I was really excited to hear her say that, that she would roll up her sleeves and get into the nitty gritty if needed, and help out where it's needed, and it just isn't gonna, rule from on high. So that was yeah. So that is it for me. Okay. Any last items before we move on? Okay. So the next candidate we will speak about is Mr. Timothy Luff. I'm going to not go the other way, but I'll start with Kate.
Great. All right. So from the first round of interviews, it was clear that Mr. Luff had a comprehensive, forgive me for reading from notes, but if I don't, it'll be a mess.
No, I kind of wish I did, but go ahead.
From the first round of interviews, it was clear that he had a comprehensive understanding of the job of superintendent and has direct experience with both the systems and relationships-based aspects of the role. He was good at giving concrete examples in his experience in both areas. In terms of communication and leadership style, through each step of the process, Tim was approachable and outgoing with his communication style. We received over 20 reference letters and recommendation emails that all echoed Tim's collaborative, knowledgeable, and student-centered approach. These were from administrators, teachers, and municipal partners. Mr. Luff emphasized the role of being visible and present in the district and community as key to engagement. When asked about building teams and hiring, his baseline is what's best for kids, breaking down silos, and then being present in buildings. When asked about evaluating teachers, he talks of the needs for establishing mutual goals and giving ongoing feedback. He cited experience with a learning and innovation PD program in his current district. I was with the students, and Tim had a great conversation with this Student Advisory Council. He wasted no time in asking them many questions about their experience. The questions demonstrated to me what his mooring for the work of his district, which is ultimately student outcomes. Questions like, do you feel safe? Do students feel like they can be themselves? How is the experience for new students? Are you challenged enough in your work? Do students have a variety of options for extracurriculars and electives? And what do you think makes a good superintendent? Are there issues with substance abuse and vaping? And so the students really reacted well to that. You could tell they were very responsive. They were very eager to give their input, and I just thought it was an authentic exchange. And you could tell again that he was student-centered there. Staff and community feedback largely echoed that he was personable and engaging and demonstrated knowledge around the organizational aspects of running a district. In terms of budget, he established a reputation for municipal partners, including working with FinCom to understand the nature of challenges of education budgets, and explaining it to municipal partners. Sorry, that was unclear. When asked about budgeting, he focused on building trust and starting early as part of the key to getting buy-in from municipal partners and emphasizing how a budget should be tied to the strategic plan. It also, he's also knowledgeable about the town meeting form of government. Tim has experience in both high and low-income districts and has experience with making hard decisions and developing creative solutions. For capacity building, several times in the initial interview process, Tim demonstrated that he had been studying Norwood. Examples as it related to our high needs population, building project, and our actual budget. Tim's experience in SPED stands out. In addition to his long background in direct service experience, the student self-advocacy program he led in Natick and his emphasis on being in classrooms and identifying challenges along with teachers speaks directly to the creative problem solving that Norwood could benefit from. When asked about educating the whole child, and again about safety in schools, Tim identified SEL as being key to students being able to learn, feel secure, and be contributors in school. This was reiterated in the final interview when asked about safety in schools and how social emotional ability contributes to safety. Both in the initial interview and final interview, Tim spoke to work on equity as a strategic initiative. Having worked on belonging as a strategic plan in his own district, he brings an understanding that he himself and many faculty have to do the work of understanding their own positionality to truly educate responsively and effectively. He also emphasized how student belongingness impacts a feeling of safety for all and underpins academic performance. And I think that's it that was a lot, but.
Excuse me, I also thought that Tim was very well prepared. I believe he has the most experience at the assistant or deputy and superintendent, like from the assistant level up to superintendent level in our pool. He has extensive special ed experience, which our district is experiencing tremendous growth in, and the budget around this needs to be dealt with and adjusted, and he has extensive experience in multiple different budgeting approaches, zero-based budget, level budget, et cetera. Staff and faculty ranked him very, very highly in the feedback that we got from them through the surveys, and Tim was incredibly well supported by the community forum, the community parent forum, including the quote, "I think he is someone the whole town can get behind." His safety and well-being answer is comprehensive. He laid out multiple different areas of safety and well-being and addressed how there are challenges in each area and then strategies for supporting those. He is experienced in being out in the community on various task force and showing up and doing the work, including things like bringing play-based literacy programs for preschool through grant funding. And he's committed to the student experience and infusing resiliency through students, specifically the example of through the student-led IEP program. That is it for me.
I think Tim's experience is clear. He's had probably of our finalists the most comprehensive experience at central level office, holding different roles in a central office, working with those teams. The district that he came from is the middle one of the three finalists. Obviously, his district is well resourced and have been able to do some really great things with those resources, which is very, very clear. I think especially his background in special ed is definitely something that resonates with the district, and his experience with it is clear, and his through both the first interview and the finalist interview and the visit night where we got to spend time with him, or the time that I spent with him, that was made clear, that knowledge there, and I think also his desire and readiness to move into a superintendent role. I think he was very direct with that, not to say that others were not direct, but I think he made it clear that his goal is to move into a superintendent role, and I think that his experience and job positions and background in special ed have demonstrated that.
I think it was very clear that Tim had a lot of the qualities of what we're looking for, especially for the needs of Norwood. A lot of things that matched up very nicely. Obviously, we just talked about several times his special education background. We have a increasing needs in Norwood, and I think that could really help help us as a district, that a leadership with, you know, someone who's very well versed in that, in special education, could really help us out a lot. One of the other things that, you know, safety and security. He was the safety and security officer in his current district, and has brought in grant funding for, you know, a director of safety and security there. And so, you know, really to me understands, you know, that the needs of students to stay safe. You know, he talked about in his interview, you know, the intercom, the walkie-talkies like system, and just making sure the buildings could, you know, talk to each other. And some of the things that you might just overlook from a safety standpoint, you know, he really seemed to have his finger on. And that's something that I think, you know, we as a district are looking to improve. I also noted that, you know, throughout his references, in any case, you know, a lot of people would talk about a lot of initiatives. And, you know, by the time we got to the question on initiatives, they'd already given me 15 initiatives that, you know, so it was, you know, something that he was really, seems to be really good at, is if you find something that's really going to benefit the students, going after it and getting, you know, community behind it and getting the stakeholders excited about it and really being able to bring those things in, whether it's grant funded or, you know, obviously in a well, you know, funded district, you're able to do some of those things naturally from the budget, but it did seem there was a lot of grant funding things in here that, so knows how to go after the grants. And again, just, you know, community, being able to speak to the community. I think that's something that we really need, somebody who can communicate, is a clear communicator. I thought, you know, when he came and interviewed, a lot of he was very detailed. Like, there was a lot of details, and I don't disappreciate, that's a bad word. That is not English. I am appreciative of that, you know, that level of detail and thought. And, you know, again, to the community engagement, you know, there was some discussions with, again, in some of the references about some of the other outside community groups in his current district that he would join up, just to be able to be engaged with the public and to understand what the needs are of the general community, not just the school community. So I just think that there's a lot of parallels. He's also had to do really hard things in his current district. You know, one of the things that he discussed was, you know, having to close a school. You know, so there are hard things that he's had to deal with and has come through them. And I think that would be very valuable with having to deal with the adversity as well. So.
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo almost whatever was said, but I'll share what I prepared. So I think Mr. Luff clearly brings a lot of valuable experience in many of the department's systems and structures that we as a school district need to assess and determine how we most efficiently move forward in them. He has experience in HR, strategic planning, contract negotiations, finance and budgeting, building projects, school safety, student services, including special ed and ELL, and in policies and procedures. I think he could, on day one, jump into Norwood and help us with many of the critical tasks and initiatives that are on our plate and that are coming. He clearly did his homework about Norwood, as many of my colleagues have also said. In his interview with us, he mentioned our strategic plan. He referenced our equity audit. He talked about some of the SEL learning at the elementary schools. He was familiar with the elementary study. He referenced our school committee operating protocols. And he also talked about the pathway programs at the high school. Feedback was shared with us by staff who were involved in the tours of the schools with him, that as he went around, he was asking questions to teachers about how things are done in Norwood, and that he seemed to already be planning for where and how he could jump in and support the work. I think he is the candidate with the most experience in student services and in making hard decisions in his career about programming, staffing, and structures. I really appreciated his responses to our questions around safety and well-being of both students and staff. He focused not only on the physical well-being, but also on the mental health and social well-being. He said to us, safety in general is about empathy, and that really resonated with me. I also liked how when we asked him about staff well-being, he talked about process and protocols around hiring and recruitment and retention, and that all of those are really important to review and strengthen to ensure that our staff is taken care of. When we asked him how he would define his success as a superintendent after 3 years, he gave concrete examples of work that is mentioned in our strategic plan and how he would move it forward. He gave examples of the elementary study, the middle school project, but he also mentioned that a measure of success would be developing relationships in the school and in the community. And he also mentioned wanting to establish metrics around increasing student growth levels. So to me, I heard a very well-rounded, comprehensive answer to what success could be for a superintendent. And I think for a superintendent, we need somebody who can think both big picture and also those small details of how you get to the big picture. I think he's a very strong candidate for many of the systems and structures that we need to focus on, but I also really appreciated the element of humanity and respect that he demonstrated for other staff and students. Also, as many of you said, that was very evident in his references. His references were stellar. The people described him as being a leader who listens, who asks critical questions and wants the critical discussion, and tries to find a balance in what both students need and what staff need. When we asked him in the interview to describe his management style, Mr. Luff said that he likes to ask people, do you like your job, and how can I make it better for you? And when we asked him to discuss assessment and achievement of students, as Joan pointed out, he talked about engaging students in their own self-determination. And those two answers really spoke to me. I think Mr. Luff can bring both the analytical and operational components that we need, as well as the communication and personal skills to lead with trust.
Okay, so now we will move to our final finalist, Ms. Priya Tahiliani. Should I start with Joan first? Should I just keep going down the line? Start with David first?
No, start with Joan.
Start with
I just want to make David go first once. Okay, so I was very impressed with a number of things with Priya. One of the things that struck me the most was she's incredibly successful in forging partnerships with groups, both inside and outside of the city, to help fill gaps that the school was experiencing, including after-school enrichment. The successes that she was discussing are unique and noteworthy. She discussed teacher pipeline programs. She wooed City Year out of Boston into Everett, which is pretty amazing. And so the work with the Haitian Center to provide after-school enrichment or after-school support, I think speaks to creativity in filling budget, in filling gaps through ways that are creative in terms of budget-wise. And I think that she also has extensive budgeting experience, as is evidenced by the artifacts that she provided to us, and kind of the impressive ways that the budget has been kind of both stretched and thought about there, including a commitment to listening to the student voice, including in budget decisions, which I was struck by. I think she was warm, friendly, and committed to understanding parents and concerns. Another area I was particularly impressed about was that in the community forum, she was asked a question that was very specific, and when we re-asked her about it in the finalist interview, she had gone back and done more Norwood-specific research to understand the context of the question better, and provided a comprehensive answer, which I appreciated. So she was, I think, incredibly well prepared, probably the best prepared candidate that we saw, and is obviously very hardworking and dedicated to education and to the communities that she works in. She's also very experienced with change. She spoke about arriving in her district and shepherding it through COVID. I think she said that she had been there for less than a week before she had to close schools, which was, kind of an amazing experience to have to go through. And I think that speaks to her ability to be adaptable, to be able to lead during a crisis, and to keep her eyes on the prize and to shepherd a district through that. I think she has extensive experience in understanding the ELL experience, which is an issue that we are grappling with in our current district about how to best serve our students who are learning English. And so I think that would be a benefit to us as well. But again, for me, it was the partnerships that she was able to forge, and her commitment to the student voice, and just the evidence that she is incredibly hardworking and comes to everything as well prepared as she can be.
Yes, I think to build off what Joan said, an incredible amount of professional experience with a lot of different areas that are impactful to Norwood in terms of EL and ESL, so English as a English learner, English as a second language, being in the classroom and teaching as well. She was excuse me, a teacher for over a decade, which that is something, this is my own teacher bias, is we don't have enough people that have taught for 10 plus years that move into administration, and I think that matters. As I had said, I think around the population or populations that we have, whether it is an increasing special ed population, an increasing EL population, migrant families that have come that are now in the district. She has experience with all of those in a much larger scale, both in the Boston Public Schools and her previous district as well. I also think it was something, Joan, and I think you had touched upon this, but talking about pathways, she talked a lot in one of her answers about sort of pipelines and pathways, not just for students, which I know that has been a focus here at the high school level, but I think such a great thing when you talk about public schools as a community entity where not only students, but then former students who graduate, who come back, who are paraprofessionals, educational aides, who have then sort of worked their way up in the system. So we talk about being able to recruit and grow and develop staff and students, I thought was pretty spectacular, and I think her experience with a lot of those populations, and not that any one of the finalists we have a district that is exactly like ours. I think her experience with a lot of the increasing numbers of certain populations, as we have said, EL, special ed, she had the most experience with, and I think that's incredibly important. I also think, like you said, just in terms of adversity and jumping in, to take over a district and a week later have to make the decision to shut down. I think all three, have experienced, what public education was able to do from March 13th, 2020 through, I think, what was it, September of 2021 when we began back in person. I forgot that 3-year stint of my career is pretty impressive, and totally, and I can't say enough about her experience with, again, as I have said, sort of a similar population and building some of those programs, not just for students that are in, but, sort of students beyond into careers, was very impressive.
I also was, echo, what my colleagues are saying. I also was very impressed with her interview. She was very well spoken. She had a lot of great details. I was, I'll draw the parallels to Norwood. The things that were particularly would be great for our district are exactly what David was saying. She was a teacher. She was an EL teacher. She was actually in the classrooms, and I think that's really a really good experience to actually have taught for as long as she has, to understand, what teachers in the classroom are going through. And need for supports and students in the classrooms. I think that unfortunately when we don't have teachers that come up through the ranks, you definitely lose a little bit of touch with that. I think her experience in EL is something that we absolutely could use her expertise in. Day one, we have an increasing population of EL in Norwood, and it's been pretty well handled, but we could always use some more expertise in that area. I liked her responses around, safety and security. I know that's not just with the stupid crap that goes on these days with swatting and things like that, but certain parents are pretty, this is high on their priority list, and it also speaks to her crisis management skills, but with discussing the incident that she had to deal with in her current district with the incident where it went so far as to have to look into things like bulletproof glass and things like that. So definitely crisis mode and having to respond to something in the immediate, but also understanding you know, we can't let safety and security, you know, back burner for silly thing like COVID, because it is going to come back to bite you. I did also like that, you know, I think some people would say that we rely too heavily on data, but unfortunately with MCAS and things like that, you know, we really are, we have to be data driven. And that was one thing she really talked about, was being data driven, really being able to use things like DataWise to get, you know, district data and to be able to understand it for student learning. The other piece, of course, around special education, you know, she did speak to just having the experience with, I know that she did speak about having out-of-district program in the city. So, you know, but just having to deal with that in general and understanding out-of-district placement and understanding, you know, the needs and the transportation and the cost and things like that, even though, I mean, we'd love to have an out-of-district program that we could charge tuition for. But just the fact that she has had to deal with those things and understands them and understands the implications and the cost of that would really be something that would be beneficial for our district.
Yeah, so to add, I really do appreciate and respect a lot about Ms. Tahiliani. She clearly did her homework about Norwood. She spoke about our meetings that she's been watching. She referenced our equity audit. She talked about our portrait of the grad. She read our DESE comprehensive review that was recently done. I appreciate that. She read it. She said she had some ideas already of how to implement some things. And she read our strategic plan. It impressed me that she gave us this after her interview. And she spent time going through our strategic plan, and she aligned all of our initiatives with concrete examples of work that she has already done to show that she could do the work. So I have no doubt that she could come in here and do the work. Based on all of her references, which I was responsible for doing her reference checks, so I did speak to her references. They all described her, and these are words that I heard from everybody. They all described her as a strong leader. They all described her as having a moral compass and integrity to do what is right for students, even when it involves hard decisions. I heard that over and over again, those words. Priya seems to be somebody who is always thinking creatively and innovatively about how to meet the needs of all students. During the forums and the interview with us, through her resume and via her references, we learned about innovative programming that she brought in for different subgroups of students that Joan and David have already referenced. She has extensive experience bringing in partnerships for programs. I see her knowledge and experience benefiting us, and that she could be a real change maker for things like our career pathways and engagement opportunities that we are trying to get into our schools, you know, from pre-K to age 22. Ms. Tahiliani's passion for ELL students and non-traditional students are strengths, as well as her dedication to workforce diversity and development. These seem to be values that she had when she was a teacher, when she was a director, when she was a superintendent. It has always been part of her career. She shared with us, as Joan and David have mentioned, the pipeline she has established in other districts to help students become paras. I think she said they had some students through a pathway in Everett that graduated and were paras right away. That's amazing. She talked about helping paras become teachers, teachers become administrators. She also talked to us about a partnership with a college that helped get more licensed guidance counselors into our schools, into her schools. I think all of this is really critical and important work that we've been discussing as part of our strategic plan, work that we keep saying that we want to do, and work that we just not yet have been able to obtain. So I think she could help us in all those ways. I also think she brings the right approach to safety and well-being. She was able to, you know, adequately discuss both the physical safety and the social and emotional well-being, you know, Anne-Marie, as you were speaking about. During the forums, the students who met with her seemed to have responded in a positive manner, and one of the feedback that we received in the forums from a student was that Ms. Tahiliani was very easy to talk to and seems like she would be somebody who wants to know her students. When we interviewed her, she mentioned to us how excited she was to know that the school committee does meet with our student advisory council. She said, you know, that's something everybody's supposed to do, but most people don't, and she seemed to really like that we had that level of engagement and want to be a part of it. Again, I checked her references, and all the people I spoke to mentioned that she is first and foremost student-focused and student-centered. And that definitely rings true to me based on what I've seen from her when she was in Norwood. I think she brings a lot of experience in budgeting and financing, and in particular with bringing in grants, partnerships, and programs that are cost-effective, often free from what she described to us, and also economical in scale. One of her references was another superintendent who spoke about 5 districts who work together, and Priya helped these 5 districts together bring in some amazing PD curriculum and development for staff that one district by themselves would not have been able to do, and I think that's really impressive. Priya, as someone who has been a superintendent before, does bring the direct and proven experience with her. I think she is the candidate who would be the most innovative in how to supplementally fund our district's budget and how to grow our offerings creatively for students. To me, she clearly demonstrates a strong work ethic, a thorough understanding of public schools, and a desire to positively impact the trajectory of each and every student.
Okay, being last, I've heard a lot of my notes already said, so I'll truncate a little bit. Priya had an excellent interview right off the bat where she demonstrated her comprehensive knowledge of the superintendent's job. She shared reports out at the end of that also demonstrated her organization and ability to communicate clearly and for different stakeholders. She's organized, well prepared, hugely important for interacting with all stakeholders. She was concise and gave concrete examples of her initiatives and demonstrated that she had looked at what's going on in Norwood already. Her last district, she entered at a time of recovery, for lack of a better word, trauma, and from what we got from her references and recommendation letters, that even through all of that and the difficulty that she faced after a long period of dysfunction, that she maintained professionalism and was able to have hard conversations and always had students at the center of those conversations. She defined engagement as being immersed and responsive to all families, rolled out translation services for engagement, which was a first for her, or she improved that very much so in their district where it was hugely important. And she created a system for staff input to be built into processes on a regular basis, which shows her value as a leader for teachers. She was passionate about pipelines, building professional capacity. So you guys have already talked about that in terms of building up that capacity of the teaching professionals. So in terms of the district capacity building, Priya has direct experience with a diverse and high needs population, which is a growing and significant population here in Norwood. So that is a strength. And she has success in engaging students who've left. I think that the program was mentioned already, where kids, she created a Saturday school program, and it brought people that were falling through the cracks back into the fold. It was a huge risk, and it paid off. She, again, as my colleagues have said, she's hugely successful in pursuing grants and community partnerships for the benefit of her district and staff. And she instituted a more equitable hiring practice that would be consistent throughout the district when sort of it was a little bit of anything goes. So I thought that was good. And in terms of budget, she started a new process in her district based on transparency and included a series of stakeholder meetings. She talked about this in her interview, and leaders to be part of the plan from the beginning. And she gave options to the school committee about that. And there was she talked about linking the budget to the strategic plan, and her organization and consistency really came off as a strength for really all the processes that are going to be required for this role. And I think she'd be a fantastic leader, a strong leader that would make hard choices. And I agree with the sentiment about her creativity and innovation in terms of grant funding and things like that. That's it.
Okay, thank you guys for all of your input. So at this point, we're going to go around and just kind of straw poll, for lack of a better term, what everyone is thinking for their top 1 or 2 choices, and see if that leads us to a nomination. Do you want to start? Well, I just like to work in a circle.
It's David's turn.
It's
David's turn to start first.
So I can just say who my top 2 are?
Yeah. If you want to explain why, go for it. If you just want to.
Again, I think we have a really strong candidate pool. If you were polling me, and as you are asking for my 2, it would be Priya and Tim.
I get to go second. The chair usually goes last. So again, I agree with you. We had a really strong candidate pool. There really is no wrong answer. I think all 3 candidates could lead the district quite efficiently and well. But if to narrow it down, 1 for me would be Tim. I think he has more parallels with the things that we need in the district, and experience in those things. And then 2nd for me would be Meg, Dr. Dussault, because she's the complete opposite of that. I mean, she has a lot of experience, but like just the approach would be a fresh kind of, not your traditional approach, and that could really work.
Yeah, so I think, where we need to go, where we are, where we need to go, and all the really hard work ahead. There's 2 candidates that I think, in different ways, but could both get us there very successfully, are Priya and Tim.
I think based on my opening thoughts about relationship building and systems and processes being sort of key to where we're at right now, I would put forward Tim at this point.
We waited to last.
I know. I think, again, I have been really conflicted about this. I think that all of these candidates could do a good job. I think given where we are at, thinking about for next year, I would say for me, it's Tim and Priya.
So that's,
Do you want me to? Sorry.
if someone would like to nominate.
We all said Tim, so I'm gonna put forth a motion to nominate Tim to be the next superintendent. We did all say Tim.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't miss Priya and Tim, Tim and Meg, Priya and Tim and Priya.
Yep.
Okay.
I had to think about it.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't
No,
miss.
you heard correctly. Is there a second to that? Or do we,
Yes, second.
yes, do we need to have any discussion on this? Kate.
I have no further comments.
All right, so we will vote on that, yes?
I didn't say that I think everybody has their strengths and would be a great addition. And I just would like to add that because I did skip to my 1 because moving ahead, but I do appreciate, again, just want to reiterate my appreciation for all of their talents.
Absolutely. All right, all those in favor?
Wait, what's the
Wait.
exact motion?
I would like
Oh.
to nominate Tim to be the next superintendent,
And don't we have to say pending successful contract negotiations?
pending successful contract
okay.
negotiations.
Sorry, just want to be clear
I feel
on
like-
what we're doing.
Yeah, I feel like that's,
Yeah.
I mean, if he wants to come and work for free, that's cool too. Like, we'll accept that. But yes, pending successful contract negotiations.
Kate, do you accept that
I do
addition to the
accept
motion?
a friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that passes 5-0. Again, I do want to thank everybody on the committee, everybody who, I've said this already, but everybody who applied, everybody who, especially our 3 finalists, as we were saying, any of the 3 could have easily led this district well. And so thank you to everybody who came out and gave their opinions and gave their feedback and really helped with the process.
I believe you're supposed to make a phone call.
Do I have to do it right this second or after we
I don't
adjourn?
know,
Well, do you want to be able to come back and announce whether the candidate's accepted or not?
pending successful contract negotiations.
So I
So-
think we should probably recess.
Recess for a
We
couple
should make
minutes.
a phone call, then we'll come back and announce that, and then go into executive
Okay.
session.
We will take a brief, oh, I need a motion.
Motion
Teresa.
to recess so you can make a phone call.
Seconded by Kate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that 5-0. We will be back in a couple minutes. Welcome back to our school committee meeting of Wednesday, February 7th. We're coming back to you after a brief recess. I am happy to report that I have contacted Mr. Luff about our nomination, and he has accepted pending contract negotiations. And so very excited. We'll be contacting him with next steps soon. So thank you all. So that does bring us to the end of our regular meeting. However, we do need to go into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations with union and non-union employees. Oh, wait, I forgot school committee addenda. Does anybody want any addenda?
No, I actually have an addenda. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Sorry.
Teresa's good. Kate, you're good.
good, yeah.
Joan, go for it.
Okay, I'll be short. So the only reason I have the addenda today is because I was talking with a student of mine earlier today who's doing research on staff retention and education, and she shared with me that the according to the Department of Labor, the two highest sectors with attrition post-COVID are healthcare and education, according to the Department of Labor. And so I think we should all think about that as we're thinking about building the budget process, and thinking about what it takes to attract and retain people, not only to our district, but to the system of education writ large. Because as we are seeing what happens firsthand when the healthcare system collapses, a la Nord Hospital being gone, a la Good Samaritan, there's another one that's closing somewhere near us too. Sinai, Mount Sinai, and Stoughton. You are going to see that on it's just a slower sliding scale in education. You don't see somebody who passes from a heart attack because they don't get to the hospital in time, but you see a kid never learn English and thus not be able to contribute to society in a productive and meaningful way in the way that they hope and want to. And as a grandchild of immigrants whose grandparents learned English through the public school systems and taught my parents' generation English through the public school systems, I think about the generational impact that would have been, and that my generation of my family, who are lawyers and stockbrokers and business owners, and I'm the black sheep being just a silly old faculty member, wouldn't have gotten the same type of opportunities in education had someone else's tax dollars not funded my grandparents, as I fall out of my chair, grandparents' education. And so keep that in mind, that healthcare and education are linked in the Department of Labor as the two highest sectors with the most attrition. Told you I'd be short. I didn't say I'd be positive.
Debbie Downer.
I have nothing.
I will just say, because now that I was kind of really excited a minute ago, but congratulations to Mr. Luff. Again, excited about this process and that it's done. Okay, so now we need to go into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiation with union and non-union employees. And I will need a motion. Oh, we will only reconvene for the purpose of adjournment. And I need a motion to go into executive session. Oh, you all, wow. That has never happened. Note that. Never happened. I heard David first, but I saw Teresa's hand, so we'll say Teresa second. And I need to poll you individually. So Teresa?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We will be back again next Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. Back here in the Savage Center room, the school committee room, in hybrid format. Have a good night.